Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We have Game 2 in this best of 3 series at the MLG Raleigh 2011 Open bracket between our red Terrans spawning at the top left position of Tal'Darim Altar, who is none other than Complexity Gaming's TriMaster. And over here in the bottom right corner we have Sweden's own Gorilla Terran. It is Team Liquid's very own Jinro. Now, back in Game 1, we saw Jinro take the win with some incredible Viking Thor play after correctly scouting the double starport play coming out of TriMaster and effectively navigating his way to a build order win, but not before TriMaster managed to get out a hero battlecruiser, which was incredibly entertaining and even pushed back a wave of Jinro's attacks. So hopefully we should see some more entertaining play in this game, but we are probably going to see a little bit more of a macro game given the sheer size of this map. Tal'Darim Altar often favors very early expansions because people are less likely to be able to harass. There's a lot of positional play, and we just generally get far fewer cheeses, at least in Terran and Zerg play. Obviously, Protoss, you still have 4 gates that work reasonably well on maps of any size because of the ability of the pylon to warp in units. So we do have some scouting going on here by TriMaster. He's not going to get the correct location first time, but he is going to get it next because they are cross-map as far away from each other as possible. Meanwhile, no scout coming out from Jinro just yet, instead electing to wall off at this choke point between his natural and his main, with a barracks and what I'm going to assume will be 2 supply depots. He may lift that up later to open things up once he starts saturating his natural so that he can create more of a block up down in this position. Meanwhile, TriMaster is going to get in and see what Jinro is doing. Jinro sends a scout SCV of his own. Of course, from the angle that TriMaster SCV came into the base, Jinro has not much idea about where he could be, but I believe because it's MLG, there's a chance that there is an enforced cross position. I'm not sure, and I'd have to check this. Either way, Jinro going to the watchtower first, and then proceeding to very cleverly just check these watchtowers to see if the scout SCV is going to go back anywhere. Of course, though, it is not. It is already in Jinro's base, so Jinro is very unlikely to get any sort of additional information out of that. Normally people check out the watchtowers so that they can see where their opponent's scout is coming from and then immediately deduce where they are. So I can see I was wrong a little bit earlier. It's quite clear there isn't enforced cross positions on Tal'Darim Altar. There is on quite a few maps, including I think Metalopolis and Shakura's Plateau, but not on this map, as Jinro scouts this base first and is now going to proceed to check out this section of the map where we do have TriMaster putting down his command center. So that's going to be quite interesting because we have a starport coming out from Jinro. It looks like he's going for quick Banshee play. There's the tech lab going down on the factory, which will very promptly float over somewhere around here, I would suspect, and the starport going straight onto that tech lab. We have a Reaper coming out for TriMaster that does successfully negotiate that scouting SCV, and we now have Reaper on heli in action, which is something, of course, talked about quite a lot if you're a fan of the GSL, how Reapers do beat Hellions in a one-on-one. Well, we're actually about to see it live, but the Hellion knows this and wants none of it. Unfortunately, he's going to run right into that Marauder, and it looks like he's just about going to survive to get a couple of pot shots off at the mineral line. But I wonder exactly how much damage it's going to do before, and the answer is not a lot. Meanwhile, incredible star sense from TriMaster here, getting out that engineering base, so he's going to have turrets up in his mineral line by the time this Banshee decides to pop out. Jinro is also going for Cloak, so those turrets will be doubly useful as well. Very good counter, well not counter, sorry, just intuitive thinking coming out from TriMaster. Incredibly impressed with his timing on that. We also have Stim going down, so we can see more of a bio army coming out of TriMaster, while Jinro is teching more directly towards Starport. We now have 3 barracks going down. So TriMaster not afraid to go bio, at least in the early game, TvT. Now, a lot of TvTs recently have just been mech and nothing but mech, so it's going to be interesting to see how these two players' styles differ from each other And there we have the turrets going down immediately, although yes, one in the main here. And is there another one in the natural? There is, and that one has just completed. There might be a chance that Banshees could still get around harassing these couple of mineral patches here because of the positioning of this turret. I wonder if another one's going to go up later on. Meanwhile, that turret comes in incredibly useful as the first Banshee from Jinro gets a couple of shots up and lands exactly where there's a hole to try and take a few pot shots at those SCVs. Nothing these Marines can't handle though. Meanwhile, back in the base, we've got the bunker going down. The Banshee now utilizing Cloak to pop by, but don't forget the detection range on this turret is actually a lot further than it can shoot, so those Marines could actually see that Banshee. Not quite now though, but the scan does take care of that. Even 2 Marines on the back here just to make sure it doesn't get away. Very nice, sensible play there from TriMaster. We've got Blue Flame Hellion going on for Jinro, who is also preparing his command center to seize that natural and grab those extra minerals. But of course, in terms of economy, he's going to be very slightly behind TriMaster, who got his expansion down first. We can see in the unit tab, still reasonably close SCV-wise, 31 SCVs for TriMaster against the 28 of Jinro. We do have another Banshee coming in here to harass the main, but Marines are already in place, and that turret's going to deter most additional harass from this Banshee. It's going to do a little bit of micro with Cloak, but eventually it's going to stop, and it looks like Jinro is not going to get too much real damage done. I think he realizes this and spends a little bit less micro on his Banshee while he macros up, and then he comes straight back in for round 2. The Marines, of course, having none of it, and finally deciding to stim in. There's the scan, and will the Banshee go down? No, it survives in the red with 20 hit points. Jinro going right up against the edge of the map, not wanting to give that Banshee up at all. And it looks like it might live to harass another day, but it's certainly not going to be popping into the mineral line any point soon. He does wisely decide to send that Banshee home, and it looks like it's probably going to get repaired and come back at a later date. Meanwhile, over here we've got a couple of Hellions coming out to scout from Jinro, still pursuing his mech play, and we have a Concussive Shell coming out from TriMaster, so insisting on going this bio-heavy composition in the early game. We have Medivacs coming out from TriMaster now, who is momentarily supply blocked, and we've got the double rage supply depots going down. When you get supply blocked as Terran, you get really angry and you build loads and loads of supply depots at once. In fact, basically from Bronze League up, you start building 6 at once, and then by the time you're in sort of Masters, Grandmaster, you're only building 1 or 2. Note to self, that's not actually true. But everyone's been there. If you're a Terran player, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is unbelievably frustrating. But on the plus side, he's got quite a few good upgrades coming down. These Marines and Marauders are now 1-0, and we've also got the armor upgrade popping down as well. Meanwhile, just out that we've got, oh my goodness, a couple of very, very nice pot-shot Marine kills from those Hellions, who wisely leave as soon as they figure out the Concussive Shell is actually on those Marauders. We've got a Medivac coming out here, so it looks like it's probably going to pick up these Hellions and go into TriMaster's base to attempt some sort of drop play. This could be quite effective because in the base, the turret is actually positioned here, which means he can probably get the Hellions right inside the base if required without being shot by that turret, and those Hellions can really land very close to the SCVs. Alternatively, he can go straight past these turrets here and see if he can land in this corner, which looks like it might be unsighted as far as Jinro goes. Let's take a look. Yeah, so this very tip here might be alright, but we'll have to wait and see what's happening. We do have the Medivac popping out now just as TriMaster decides to also push out across the map with his bio. That watchtower is being held by Jinro. Will those Hellions decide to engage? They do not. In fact, they decide to run by. So there's quite a high possibility here of... Oh, and hang on, we do have the drop going down. 3 Blue Flame Hellions do start harassing the mineral line, but some stim bio does come out, and this drop looks like it's going to be quite quickly cleaned up. The Medivac should just about manage to get away, so no real harm done. Meanwhile, we have TriMaster's bio force leaving a Marine behind at the watchtower to make sure there's no backstabbing shenanigans going on before double checking to see if Jinro has a third by popping in the back way. Jinro currently does not though, and he has 3 siege tanks and a bunker set up in a very nice position at his natural, so it doesn't really look like that much harassing is going to get done. We have very, very good map control here from TriMaster. He actually has a Marine at all 4 Xel'Naga towers. If we just compare what the vision of each player is now. This is TriMaster's vision. He sees nearly all of the map, whereas Jinro seems to be confined to only his base. So Jinro a little bit behind on map control, but then again he is in a perfectly defensible position, so he's not going to suffer too badly at this present time. He has got 2 sensor towers up to make sure that no drops sneak into the base from either side, but this watchtower in particular not actually that far by air from the main, so I wonder if a drop could come in anyway, disregarding the sensor tower and just hit fast enough that Jinro doesn't have too much time to react. But we do have the rocks being taken down now. The Bioforce sees this, immediately pops into point defense drone going up, and it looks like, yeah, he's going to get very, very comfortably repelled by the superior force from Jinro. A very nice placement of that point defense drone. And it looks like even these Hellions are going to mop up those Marauders, which is not something you get to see in every StarCraft game. We do have another small army sort of poking and prodding in here, though, and a couple of tanks sieging up in what's known as the sweet spot at the natural, laying waste to these SCVs in Jinro's natural expansion, but Jinro does manage to get them off, sieges a few tanks of his own, and this little drop here is going to have to retreat. Meanwhile, the Hellions do come in here to try and mop up those siege tanks, with unsieged tanks of Jinro coming up in the rear. Actually, not that many Hellions destroyed there, but we do have quite a large number of them in the orange and red, and they are in dire need of a repair job. Meanwhile, we've got another Blue Flame Hellion drop in the main of TriMaster, but once again, the stimmed bio is not far behind, and it looks like it's just going to get very easily cleaned up. A lot of energy on this. I wonder if it's because he thinks Jinro is still going to go Cloaked Banshees. I notice that the energy is being used at the other orbital commands, but not this one now. There goes the Mule Bomb, so it looks like he's no longer afraid of Cloaked Banshees and has decided to drop a few. He is keeping a scan or 2 in reserve, sign of a very high-level player, just making sure at all times he's prepared so that in the middle of a battle, if something unexpected pops up, he can check it out, or if he's pushing out on the map and he wants to push into a siege tank line, he's able to scan ahead so that his siege tanks have that extra range. That's doubly important because Jinro, as it currently stands, has air superiority over TriMaster, although TriMaster is going for that bio composition with mech to support it, as opposed to Jinro, who is very, very clearly going pure mech and nothing else. Rather akin to last game, with the exception of the main bulk of his army is now siege tanks. Meanwhile, we have a possible engagement going on here. TriMaster does get the stim down, but only manages to pick up a single Hellion before the rest of Jinro's army gets here, and this is a fantastic trade for Jinro. Jinro losing not very much, while all of this bio from TriMaster does get cleaned up. His tanks, naked now, but without any support from Marines, do head back home from the middle of the map. TriMaster, of course, still occupying all 4 watchtowers for the next half a second. Oh, actually, it's a Marauder and Hellion. I think that's several more seconds. But Jinro finally pushing out and getting a little bit of map control. That Raven also looking very dangerously low on health. He definitely needs that for point defense drone, but at the same time, you don't want it to be picked off too quickly if your army is caught off guard. TriMaster, of course, with the scan, knows exactly where Jinro's army is. Now, this game, economically, is looking in TriMaster's favor just a little bit, with 69 SCVs to 58. But we do have what I believe is currently a superior army composition from Jinro. Those Vikings are going to be awfully useful, and we do have, oh my goodness, there are going to be a lot of explosions here. Siege tank on siege tank action. It looks like Jinro has the better positioning as long as he can get the scan off. And these flying units here will make sure that those siege tanks do not progress any further. TriMaster is forced to pull back. Those Marines, of course, not initially engaging the Banshee, because they would have walked straight into this siege tank fire. So Jinro takes this map position. He has a superior army composition at the moment, but it also looks like the TriMaster might be able to edge out an economic lead. We'll have to see how this plays out in the long term. A ton of upgrades being researched for TriMaster. We have vehicle weapons level 2 as well as 2-2 on the bio, which is really going to help, especially against siege tank splash damage. Both armies now moving into position, scanning to find out where everyone is. TriMaster no longer has control of the watchtowers. He's probably feeling slightly uncomfortable about this. And another trench warfare style action going on here, but this Cloaked Banshee is going to provide an awful lot of cover for these siege tanks. 1 or 2 Marine shots will kill it though. It's only at 7 health, and a full HP Banshee does take its place. TriMaster once again retreating, that scan not being able to pick off the Banshee. So meanwhile, we have a couple of Vikings being produced by TriMaster, but it's still going to take him a little while before he can really challenge the air dominance of Jinro. He has Vikings out, he's got Banshees out, and that Raven, which is now really teetering on the brink of death. It's hobbling on with the walking stick. One of its engines is probably bust. He really needs to get a little bit of a repair back. I wouldn't even mind it if just for these Banshees and the Raven were no longer because he's dead. Jinro just drops a quick mule to repair some of these air units and just maintain superiority for that much longer. We have got a soft contain being set up outside TriMaster's base. These Hellions do see that these bio units are going to go in for a flank, so this is really not going to come as a surprise to Jinro, who pulls back momentarily with his air force, but just leaving a Viking there so that these siege tanks can spot in this sweet spot here. Hopefully he can move these tanks up to just about here. But in the meantime, we do have the Bioforce from TriMaster moving into the fourth base of Jinro, which is going to promptly lift up and presumably move. Oh, Jinro, what happened there? A little bit of miss micro from Jinro, and it looks like this command center is going to go down. That also momentarily supply blocks Jinro, although since both players are pretty much maxed, that's not going to make too much of a difference. These siege tanks on the high ground, just ensuring that that bio is not going to get too much further. With only two medevacs even, it's slightly harder to elevator drop all of those into the main, especially when there are tanks around. If you have maybe 4 or 5, I can see that being quite successful. So anyway, we have Hero Raven over here with 14 hit points, still hanging around by the natural, and those siege tanks have indeed moved into the sweet spot position. Unfortunately, most of the natural's already mined out, so I suspect TriMaster's reasonably obliged. He doesn't really mind moving. This superior mobility of the Bioforce is really showing now, though, as TriMaster is casually moving all around the map, harassing Jinro every which way. And oh, we've got the bio dropping on the siege tanks. The splash damage from the siege tanks doing damage to themselves. The rest of the bio stimming in after the initial drop does its damage. Very, very nice micro there from TriMaster, and very, very good tactics to be able to take that out. Meanwhile, it looks like this third from Jinro could go down, but Jinro does send a couple of tanks. Oh, in fact, quite a lot of tanks. This bio may get cleaned up. A couple of siege tanks do go down, but the expansion does crucially stay alive. And actually, Jinro is seizing this opportunity to build yet another command center, which he may float over here instead of down here, which is where the last one got picked off. We still have some trench warfare going on here, but actually nothing that Jinro has been able to make progress on for quite a while now. It would be good to see a couple of medevacs come in and maybe elevator these siege tanks into the natural here and force the fight to the high ground. But as it currently stands, TriMaster seems to be reasonably defended, and that Thor coming out as well just to sort out that air superiority. Now here's where we can really see one of the main differences in this game. Jinro has gone pure mech, whereas TriMaster has gone a very half-half sort of mix between mech and bio. We can already see TriMaster getting the 3-3 upgrades for his bio army, which means they're going to be nearly impervious to siege tank splash damage, and it should probably do the mobility of his army incredibly good. It can take 3-3 Marines and Marauders can take out planetary fortresses so quickly you wouldn't believe. He's also got +3 on the vehicle weapons upgrade as well, churning down. So TriMaster is ahead in the upgrades department, but that's also mainly because Jinro has no need for the bio upgrades. We'll have to see whether that helps him or hurts him later on. But Jinro's army is certainly a little bit more focused, and you can argue that provided his army composition is superior, which at the moment's a little bit up in the air, I'm not actually sure who's better if everybody met in a fight, then I guess that the more concentrated resource spending from Jinro will eke him out to a bit of an advantage, but it really depends so much on positioning and who can get sieged where and how many scans are available that it's really difficult to tell in a straight up fight. And as soon as I say that, a ton more tanks, an absolute massive convoy coming in from TriMaster towards the south side, including a bunch of Vikings to support it, so it looks like he's reasonably serious about this impending attack. Jinro moving out to the watchtower and sieging up in a comfortable position, TriMaster just making sure he's still there, while sneaking in behind here to go to this fourth base that is now a planetary fortress. There aren't very many SCVs here though, so it looks like if this goes down, it's not going to do a massive economic damage to Jinro. The tanks do start sieging up. Jinro looks like he wants to move in. We're going to have to see what happens, but TriMaster gets the siege down first. It's going to be very difficult for Jinro to attack into this. A bunch of Hellions and a couple of siege tanks going down when that siege first started. And we have, oh my goodness, we've got Viking on Viking action, but crucially Jinro has 2-point defense drones because he has the Raven. Oh, and even the Manor Mule coming down from Jinro. He's saying, I've got point defense drone, there is nothing you guys can do. And TriMaster is going to get completely crushed as far as this engagement is concerned. Wisely pulls back before his units die, which is very good, but I wonder if Jinro is going to be able to cut him off. It looks like TriMaster is just going to get cut up here. There's actually no way out for him. And he's now trapped in this small corner of the map with tanks closing in on both sides. We've got Vikings and Banshees over here. It's looking pretty difficult. He takes out his frustration on those destructible rocks for what good that will do. And his army really is well and truly stranded right now. These siege tanks slowly moving in, sieging up, but Jinro's tanks aren't even sieged. It looks like Jinro's TriMaster is in a difficult position here because Jinro can just walk in. Even if TriMaster was sieged, he would at least provide some sort of token resistance. And here we go, a couple of Jinro's tanks do go down, but TriMaster is still very, very trapped in a very, very sorry position as far as this army is concerned. We do luckily have another small harass army heading over possibly to this expansion now, which could be interesting. It is morphing into a planetary fortress, but will it morph fast enough? He stims in, he knows it's there. TriMaster is going to go for it, and Jinro lifts up. He knows when the battle has been lost. This siege tank being an excellent, excellent scout. And this command center not going to be able to mine. In the meantime, very, very, very slowly, Jinro is going to try and crush this army. And a couple of scans do go off. This inevitable death is, oh my goodness, going to rain down on TriMaster's little army there. I think he's given up on it, and he's busy focusing his attention elsewhere. This army really could do some serious damage here if it weren't for this siege tank line, and that's actually brilliant defense and positioning by Jinro. Completely ignoring the main ramp because he does have a medevac to scout, and therefore this army can pop back to this position if required quite quickly, and for that reason he's only looking out for the back. I like that positioning. One Marine going to poke in and possibly take out a medevac there. There we go, the two Hellions seeing to it that he pays for his crimes. Now we do have the Bioforce popping into natural, but this bunker and a bunch of siege tanks are going to be there, although there are no Marines in the bunker at the moment. And it looks like, just as I mentioned before, some of this force does get immediately repositioned, and this Bioforce does get eliminated relatively easily. So Jinro's Custer's last stand kind of force down here has now been eliminated, and TriMaster's force, and now Jinro is moving out across the map just to regain a bit of map control. But I like this move from TriMaster. He is taking expansions all over the place. He knows that this is going to be a bit of a 4-base versus 4-base kind of starve-off here between the players. Jinro doing his best to take down this orbital, which he does. There we have the hairdryer that pops out whenever you kill a... Oh, sorry, it might have been that piece. Whenever you kill an orbital command. But TriMaster is going to have this sneaky, sneaky ninja expansion very close to where Jinro's was, actually. So this will probably prove him very well going later on into the game. Now we do have some more bio coming to defend from TriMaster, and Jinro wisely getting out of the way back into his own tank line, which of course is incredibly powerful against bio. TriMaster now setting up his own defense, and we are back to a draw situation over here, with TriMaster having slightly superior positioning on top of this ramp. We do still have just about mining in the third of Jinro, but he really needs to take another base, and he's floating out to do that over here at the 7 o'clock expansion. Some SCVs really do need to get put on the minerals here. This planetary fortress has been here forever and a day, but nothing is really mining from it. The main is definitely mined out, and the natural is completely gone, with a whole bunch of SCVs not doing very much, so this needs to be fixed reasonably quickly. Meanwhile, for TriMaster, the natural is pretty much gone, not mining there anymore after the harass earlier. The third looks like it's just about gone, and his fourth looks reasonably healthy, but crucially he has saturated his ninja expand, which will probably get sweet spotted by Jinro, and oh dear, there goes TriMaster's ambitions of being sneaky in terms of getting an economic edge. If we take a quick look at the income tab, it looks like Jinro is actually almost starving at the moment, but TriMaster still has some minerals left thanks to taking his fourth slightly sooner. That's going to change once Jinro lands this and mule bombs this 7 o'clock expansion, and possibly also after he transfers some SCVs here, but economically he's not doing very well at the moment. All these SCVs are sent to mine from this refinery, which is old and derelict and has absolutely nothing to offer. Quite tragic, out of work, they need something to do, and Jinro really needs to address those macro issues. But otherwise, on the field, in terms of army, this game's still reasonably even. We have these SCVs sneaky snake past this army here. You just about evade siege tank fire to get to the new home of that orbital command that was pushed out, but I think Jinro knows what is going on and is going to send a few more tanks in there. Just a quick Hellion scout to see that this base is in fact reasonably saturated with SCVs, so that's going to become a bit of a new target for Jinro once he attempts to take out this expansion. Or does he? Jinro deciding not to go for that command center that lifted off. He has no idea where that flew. So that's very interesting. And this Bioforce, oh my goodness, Jinro a little bit going on tilt here, unfortunately. Losing those siege tanks that could have otherwise destroyed this command center, and instead just walking them unsieged into a bunch of bio units that takes them out. That is a huge blow for Jinro, and I'm very surprised he allowed that to happen. Just taking a quick look, Jinro doesn't actually know that it was landing there, so I'm incredibly surprised that he made that move, but nonetheless he is not out of this yet. I do now think though that TriMaster definitely has a distinct advantage. This base is looking reasonably healthy, as is this one. Jinro has also successfully saturated the 7 o'clock expansion and does now have a lot more SCVs mining at this planetary fortress. So economically, this game is almost back to even ground, if not already even ground. Let's take a quick look. In fact, Jinro is mining more than TriMaster is right now, presumably because these are not SCVs, they are bio units. So it looks like Jinro just has an economic lead as it currently stands. This new base really doing wonders for him. TriMaster may want to try retaking this expansion at some point slightly later on. Meanwhile, another command center going down to Jinro, slightly unfortunate, and TriMaster now taking the spot where this orbital command used to be. We do have Jinro coming back with a vengeance to take revenge for his command centers by completely wiping out the Viking force of TriMaster. This is slightly surprising and very, very good. Economically, it's 40 SCVs for TriMaster against 48 for Jinro. Nothing terribly uneven about this matchup so far. It's been reasonably back and forth with a relatively few bad encounters from both of these players so far in the game, and reasonably high-level TvT play. This is a little bit of a throwback to the metagame of old, where siege tanks were definitely the primary means of TvT, and as a result this has become much longer than the last game. But we do have a lot more creative use, for example, of Bio from TriMaster, and also that beautiful Raven micro out of Jinro. These Vikings are going to land and deny this SCV the ability to complete this command center. As you can see, with the +1 weapons, this command center going down reasonably quickly. Those Marines popping in, not really going to make much of a difference, even though they're 3-3. At the end of the day, these are armored units, and Marines don't do that well in very small numbers against them. We've got a couple of token Hellions popping by as well, and TriMaster is going to be forced to cancelling this command center. And oh my goodness, it doesn't look like that got cancelled. So, although to be honest, with this many minerals in the bank, it's quite possible that he simply didn't notice. Meanwhile, Banshee completely taking out the mining from this base. I'm really liking this from Jinro. From before, where it looked like Jinro was being starved out compared to TriMaster, now TriMaster is really the one struggling. We do have this small Bioforce that managed to take out the 7 o'clock base, but we have a reasonably healthy mining here from Jinro. We've also got a new command center that may get some SCV transferred over here, and some of those patches on that 4th of TriMaster are starting to look a little bit worn around the edges, so he's going to have to do something here reasonably soon if he wants to maintain an econ lead of any description. We have now again got some tank on tank action, although this time it's just 2 versus 4 with a couple of very slightly weakened tanks over here. Jinro deciding to reinforce with his air army, and it looks like these stray tanks are going to get taken out. We just need 1 Banshee in this mix, and there it is. We even have 1 for Cloak, just for good measure, and these tanks are going to get promptly destroyed. Meanwhile, this bio army is going to come in to see if they can pick anything off, but it doesn't look like it at this stage. Those tanks are going to go down, and Jinro does have a large force behind here, with those siege tanks cleaning up the rest of this bio. Goodbye, sayonara. Unfortunately, that force is no more. TriMaster now dropping the mule bomb at 9 o'clock here, and we do have Jinro once again morphing the planetary fortress over at the 3 o'clock. This siege tank, beautiful positioning on it, 3-0 as well. Although planetary fortress is going to take some time to die, nonetheless, Jinro is going to be able to get some nice mule mining time before he sends some air units in here to clean up that siege tank. We do have some Hellions popping by. I'm not sure what they think they're going to be able to do, but luckily they're not going towards the siege tank. And we have 2 Banshees here to very, very comfortably sort it out. The tank is level 3 weapons, but it hasn't got armor upgrade. We have got a drive-by over here at the fort. Those SCVs, I like this micro from TriMaster. Some of those SCVs went to engage the Hellions just to stall them, and the rest of the SCVs hold tail. Very, very nice. By deliberately sacking 4 or 5 SCVs, he manages to hold off the greater forces of those Hellions. So we have got some Viking on Viking action. Jinro just desperately wanting to make sure that nothing else harasses him at this planetary fortress, and all of these Vikings are going to get cleaned up. We do, however, have still a very mobile Bioforce out in the middle of the map. And while Jinro seems to be winning some of these skirmishes, it really does look like TriMaster is doing very well in terms of map control. He can be where he wants, when he wants. And I think that's quite an important aspect of this game. Jinro, in a 1v1 open field battle right now, might be able to beat TriMaster, but the point is TriMaster's not going to be where Jinro wants him to be. And a Cloak Banshee is taking out the mule bombs that have just been placed at the 7 o'clock base from Jinro. This game economically has just nosedived on both sides. We now have 18 SCVs from TriMaster against 31 SCVs of Jinro. The amount of harass going late game in this TvT is actually insane as it currently stands. Both players not exactly sitting on a trust fund's worth of money. And yeah, I'm reasonably surprised. Jinro does have quite a lot of mules, though, left over. Let's take a look at the mule situation for TriMaster. He has just completely mule-bombed this 9 o'clock base, so his income is going to be temporarily through the roof. Once those mules disappear, of course, normality will be restored. He is using his energy well, whereas Jinro appears to be saving his up. So possibly slipping behind a little bit on that macro. He now has spent quite a few of them. And it looks like he's just going to save some for a scan in case those Banshees decide to pop up. Meanwhile, very, very good positioning. Oh, he calls down the mule in the middle of the siege tanks. This is a brilliant play by Jinro to try and get the TriMaster siege tanks to splash damage each other, but unfortunately he's not going to quite pull it off. And this Bioforce, this 3-3 Bio, doing so well against those tanks and Vikings. There were simply too many targets for the tanks to focus on, and therefore the splash damage was spread quite evenly amongst all of these bio units. That's why all of them are in the orange or the red, and actually are about to get cleaned up by this one hero siege tank, so be careful. But those siege tanks did go down because the distribution of damage through those bio units was fantastic, and that's exactly how you should be using those bio units against siege tanks. You need to be stimming them in a wide arc so that the siege tank splash damage don't do maximum damage. And after you bring them in, just wipe out the siege tanks, but then really you should retreat and get healed up before you engage again. And that's one thing that TriMaster didn't do in that battle. But we now have some siege tank on Viking action, which is quite interesting. Jinro doesn't actually need to do that, considering he had that one Banshee that could have just taken care of things. But oh well, to each their own. A little bit of this micro there. But we do have some harassment going on, and finally, this fourth base is going to get comprehensively taken out. Oh my goodness, that was actually brutal. Let's take a look at Workers' Kit. Oh, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, you thought you've seen a long game before? Well, we have 118 workers killed for Team Liquid's Jinro and 61 workers killed for Complexity's TriMaster. So this is a war of attrition going on Tal'Darim Altar. An absolutely incredible macro game being played by these two Terran giants. Remember, Jinro is up one game at the moment, so if he manages to win this game, the series will be over. We've got another air battle going on here. Beautiful point defense drone being put down by TriMaster, but the Vikings retreating. Although luckily their shots do still get blocked by the point defense drone, they're just about within range. So these Banshees are going to survive, and it looks like the harassment of this planetary fortress is going to stop for now, but I suspect TriMaster is still going to go for it later on. Meanwhile, he has completely mule-bombed this base as well, and getting much closer to the before 7 o'clock position that Jinro was occupying for a lot of the game. So TriMaster is slowly taking the left-hand side of the map here, and I can't help but feel that TriMaster has effectively taken the half of the map if you look at it on a left to right point of view, but Jinro hasn't really done much with these bases up here. So it's quite possible that in the long term this will not pay off. A couple of Marines standing here just outside the range of the planetary fortress. The harassment still continuing on the part of the TriMaster, preventing this base from doing any sort of mining at all. TriMaster has done a splendid job of continuously harassing everywhere he can this game, and I'm highly impressed with his play. Jinro does finally come in to clear that up though, but he spent more time warding off harassment in this game than he has actually mining from this base. So that is really good from him. We do now have this bottom left set of bases attempting to be secured by TriMaster, who sieges a couple of tanks up there and not going to let Jinro in as well. Jinro does, however, have this watchtower, and he has the versatility to be able to move where he wants from here. So we'll see how this game pans out. We do have another cluster of Marines here from TriMaster moving out with a bunch of tanks through the middle of the map to the right hand side, presumably going to check for expansions. Does he see those Hellions? It doesn't look like it, and I wonder what those Hellions are going to do. We do have the single tank at the watchtower being taken out by these stimmed Marines. I'm not sure it was necessary to stim all of them to take out the tank, and there is a medevac in tow with this army, so we can only afford to stim for so long. Now, stim does run out, and all those Marines are in the yellow, but he is going to be able to get a very nice contain on this base that Jinro has been trying to keep all game. He must be tearing his hair out right now, going, what do I have to do to get rid of this guy? Those Marines do get taken out. The Banshee's just about surviving for Jinro, and he's now starting to take out some siege tanks as well. However, we do have the Bioforces completely destroying the third over here, that orbital command exploding in incredibly theatrical fashion. And we are going to move on into the natural, where some of the siege tank reinforcements... Oh no, this siege tank is also not siege, so it looks like he's going to get a couple of free kills. Oh no, the bio stops! The siege tank gets several money shots off, and it looks like Jinro doesn't want to take it anymore, and he just GG's out of the game. This game looked to be not completely lost to Jinro. He could have played on for a little bit, but the addition of these bases for TriMaster, and presumably this base, which is now going to move to this position, is eventually going to win out over Jinro, where he hasn't expanded to the top right all game, and it also looks like this planetary fortress is eventually going to go down. Although that said, he has held it for 52 minutes this game has lasted. Okay, not quite that long, but he's held this planetary fortress for an incredibly long time. And I suppose he could indefinitely still try to hold it, but once again you see, look, his SCVs and mules repairing it. It's almost like they spend more time defending it than they do mining. I'm not 100% sure this base paid for itself, and that's all down to TriMaster's absolutely stupendous, wonderful micro multitasking and harassing skills that we saw throughout the entire duration of this marathon 50-minute game. And that means this series is going to go to a rubber match. The next map, I think, is going to be Metalopolis, where we will see a fitting finale to this series between TriMaster and Jinro to see who advances to the final round of the open bracket and play directly for a place in the MLG Raleigh open pools. So let's get right on to Game 3. Thank you very much for watching, and let's check the next game out.